like we're live.
Thank you for pointing that out. We were live streaming and then we weren't. So I think we're good now. Okay, we should be good now. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Membership plan goes over in dollars. Where does the money come from, Kevin?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Senator? I'm sorry.
When the partnership plan overspends or the amount they have to pay out is more than what is in there for resources, where do the funds come from?
So there are reserve funds that are held in that funds awaiting distribution account, unique and specific to partnership. So there had been a line of questioning that seemed to infer that we were able to move money willy-nilly between the state employee account, for example, and the partnership plan. That is not the case. I don't have the authority to do that. We would have to come to FAC, and we have not had to come to FAC because the balances, while the MLR had been over 100%, the balances were never negative. So we were always able to pay claims, particularly with the claims lag and the timing of premium payments. There hasn't been a situation where that would occur. And if we really did run out of money in that account, we would have to come to you and ask for permission to either move money or to seek other resources. But that was intentional, at least that setup piece was intentional, because we do share a common mission and common set of goals with our municipalities. And this was a way, as you know, to help to partner with them on healthcare purchasing.
I think that the partnership plan has worked out for municipalities. I don't doubt that at all. We used it in Sprague to save us a lot of money for us, relatively speaking. Does the fund have to have money when the claims come in or when the claims are started?
So the fund has to have the resources necessary to pay claims as they are produced. And that's one of the pieces of this. You know, there's what they call a claims lag. So I may get services on January 1st, but it is probably likely that it'll take 45, 60, or even more days for those to actually appear at the insurance company, or in this case, through the partnership, to be paid. So as long as the dollars are there to pay the bill when the bill arrives, we're good and have been.
Senator Austin, does that satisfy your questions, or do you have additional questions?
I might have a couple of additional questions, but I'm almost home. So instead of fighting Zoom, I'm going to wait until I get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And just to discuss the deficit in the partnership program, my understanding is that MLR over 100% was in 2 fiscal years. Is that correct? And then in 2020, you had a MLR of under 100%, and you also have one projected for 2021. Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator. We never were in a deficit situation. As I said, there were always resources there to pay claims, and nothing was held back. We paid the claims on time. We did have an MLR in the first 2 years of the program that was over 100%. But the MLR, now that the legislature has given me authority to do a little bit of geographic rating, meaning a couple of points over, a couple of points under for high cost counties like Fairfield versus Windham, that has leveled everything right out. And our MLR before COVID was below 100%. It's well below 100% now. But the actuarial report, independent of us, not a document that an actuary gives you lightly, I'll just add, that document says where we are, and it projects an MLR into the next year of 96, I believe, 96 and change. So leaves us room for reserving, leaves us room for admin, and the plan is healthy and a success.
Good to know. There were some questions about fringe in higher ed, and I know that there's been concern from the board, well, from both the Board of Regents and also UConn, but of fringe costs being eaten up. Do you have is there an unusual situation that we should be aware of about how fringe is paid for in those block grants?
No, I don't think so, but Bob Gribben heads up the budget and fiscal analysis division. He's a director there. Bob, anything unique that's happening?
I would say not unique. I would probably more classify it as the universities are experiencing what everybody else is experiencing, which is the costs have gone up. And so I know they're quite price sensitive to that. They're very concerned about the impact that has on their tuition and on their research. But I wouldn't call it unusual or unique. They're actually, we in the general fund covers a lot of fringe benefits on behalf of the higher education units. But they also have seen increases over the years, largely related to the unfunded pension liability in CERS retirement.
Are there questions from other members of the committee? Subcommittee?
If I could ask that unfunded liability question, as the number of staffers go down, as the number of workers go down, would it not be fair to assume that the increase on unfunded liability would go up because you're dividing the unfunded liability by the number of people?
That's right, Senator.
And that's a very good
So
point. Yes, I'm sorry, to
Go
just
ahead.
answer your question, it's unfunded liability as part of the cost pool for CERS retirement divided by the salary base of active employees in the plan. But your general point is correct. As the number of employees decline, the salary base doesn't grow as fast as the costs. And so the rates do go up. So that's a very good point, Senator.
Is it possible for the unfunded liability on, like, for instance, Passport to Parks was not designed to pay for all the salaries. The Department of Energy and Environmental Protection moved some staff over last year, which I'm considering moving them back under the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And then because the unfunded liability bankrupts the Passport to Parks program. And that was not designed for that. That was designed to keep the parks open with part-time employees, which don't have an unfunded liability component to them.
Oh, I see. So you're suggesting perhaps moving those employees back to the general fund?
Correct. Well, because it doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to bankrupt a fund
Right.
that was designed to keep the parks open in order to give some relief to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection when those staff are not 100% in the parks. The goal was 100% in the parks was part-time staffers and maybe one or two staff, but not all, now we have all the staff over there, like 50 or 60 staff are now paid out of the Passport to Parks program, effectively diminishing what the Passport to Parks program was designed for.
Right. Senator, we would agree.
That doesn't make any sense at all to me.
Right.
So that's my concern on the unfunded liability, that people think that they're increasing. All the agencies, all the quasis think that that's an increase, but it's not really an increase in the total cost. What it is an increase per person, just because there's far fewer people to spread it out.
But that, Senator, that's not the only piece of it, though. There are sort of inflationary pieces. There's many elements to it. The UAL is one piece, but there are others, and some of those grow naturally. But you're right. When you have, once the total number is calculated, when you have fewer lives, it's more per head.
And have you looked at the retiree health component of it? We're curious if the American Rescue Plan can pay any of the retiree health components of things. Have you looked at that at all to see if that's a possibility?
Yeah, Senator, from a year ago, we've been working very closely with OPM, looking at federal dollars and how and where we could appropriately use those for health, for testing, for all the things that are related. So yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. And I have to say, OPM has been great to work with, and everyone has been together and rowing in the same direction, which is awesome.
So what is the answer then on the health component, on the retiree health component? Is there a possibility to use some of the ARP funds, the ARP, American Rescue Plan funds?
I'm going to say probably not, but some of it falls under definitions, and we're happy to explore that, though we haven't explored that specifically yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Are there other questions from members of the committee? Yes, Representative France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. As I'm reviewing your report on the status of the partnership plan, on page 5, you give a financial report, and it appears, at least at the high level, that pre-pandemic you had MLRs that were over 100%, and then as we entered the pandemic, when we know that a number of people were not did not have the opportunity to take care of routine medical visits through most of the pandemic period, you have MLRs under 100%. First question is, what did you base your future estimates on for 21 and 22 that are projected that came in under 100%? And how did you come to those estimates?
Thank you, Representative France. And this is a question, as you know, that's been asked multiple times by this committee and by others and answered multiple times. But again, the MLR exceeded 100% in the first 2 years of the program for the reasons that I already stated. But it is incorrect to say that it was COVID that drove the MLR down, because you'll see there's a 94.4 in the fiscal year that ended June 30th, and COVID was a big portion of that. So we don't set the MLR. We can calculate the MLR, but we have independent actuaries, Siegel, that does this. The actuarial statements are there. The certification is there. And my concern, Representative, is that we seem to be drawing equivalency between the work of real actuaries and the back of the envelope calculations that are going on from other folks. And I would encourage us, not just on this topic, but on any topic, these are not the same thing, right? When you have independent actuaries on contract with the state who really push hard when you try to ask them for some certification, it's multiple layers within that firm. They don't just give you numbers because you want them, that really matters. That difference really matters. So the numbers you see before you are the certified numbers by the independent actuaries.
I thank you for that. I apologize. I hadn't heard the response previously, and
Certainly.
I understand that. I'm sure you have been asked a number of times that question. So my understanding of the partnership plan is, if the reserves that you have set aside and have used to pay if those are no longer there, or you exceed them, that the state of Connecticut is essentially like a self-insured program, obligated to make payment over and above whatever those reserves are. What if that were the case to happen and they were used? Where would that money come from if the reserves were exceeded? How would that process work?
So I want to be sure to differentiate between partnership, which is the existing program for municipalities, and any talk of public option, which is a different thing and structured very differently. On the question of partnership, it was the will of the legislature, and therefore the will of the people, to share risk with municipalities. So when and if state employees have a bad year and municipalities do well, or vice versa, when everything is trued up at the end as we set rates or premium equivalents for the next year, that is all taken in, and we share in the upside and the downside with the municipalities. So if both of us had a good year, it means you could see a 0% increase in rates within the partnership. If both of us had bad years, it could mean an uptick. But because of the leveling capacity of the 200,000 lives in the state plan and retirees and all that, that helps those municipalities to get predictability and has led to relief in budgets on a municipal level and predictability from year to year when they know they're seeing single digit increases, if any, versus what they used to get when they contracted on their own, which were increases of 15%, 18% and more. So because we have a common goal, common interest, common responsibilities with municipalities, it was the original legislation is very clear about how that would be handled. If they both went negative, we got a real big problem then. It's never happened. I don't think it ever will. But I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I appreciate the understanding. And since you brought up the partnership plan, you said it would be different. How do you envision, if it's passed by the legislature, that would be different than the process that you're describing under the, the public option? How would it be different than the partnership plan in operation as you envisioned it?
So the good news for the Appropriations Committee is that there's no request to you to fund the public option, right? Because there are no taxpayer dollars that would be needed to run the public option on a regular basis. It is completely self-funded. It would have a stop-loss policy attached to it, meaning in the year when claims do outpace premium, the stop-loss policy kicks in. We would also have reserving, as we do with the partnership plan, meaning there's a float. We keep money in that account to make sure that we can pay claims if they come in above what have been expected. But it's really a combination of reserving and the stop-loss policy and no shared risk that make that a very different proposition than the partnership plan that is in existence already.
Thanks. So if the public option is passed and a number of people choose to use that public option, and let's go to the ultimate end state of everybody goes into the public option, which is probably not likely, but everybody goes in. The current private sector insurance, they pay taxes and fees that come into so I would presume that would be lost revenue to the state because you would have fewer consumers of private sector insurance policies. Have you done any analysis in your proposals for this public option on what the potential lost revenue might be from that effort?
Representative, I'll take your question in the opposite way, if you'll just forgive me for a second, and that is, I'll just say that we have negotiated and agreed to many of the same fees in the public option that are paid by the private carriers. We, as a self-insured plan, do not pay for the regulation of the insurance department, for example, but no self-insured plan does, not at Electric Boat and not at any of the big employers in the state that are self-insured. And you would have insurrection on your hands if you tried to get them to do that. So in that way, it is leveling. There's been the mantra of a level playing field that's been playing out in statements made at the Capitol. And I think that levels things off quite a bit. Where it doesn't level off is the administrative load. When I'm running a plan with 2.3% administrative and no profit motive, others are in a different position. Further, Representative, if you talk to the private sector carriers that we partner with, because I know we don't run this plan through our office, we contract with the private sector to do that. So whether it's Connecticut and their subsidiary that works on the health enhancement program, or whether it's Anthem as our sole TPA, or Cigna's fully true, or Signify that works with us on quality measures and episodes of care, they all add private sector jobs when they get a contract with us because we're the biggest plan in the state. It matters to them from a business perspective to be in partnership with us. And as I said at the full hearing, one of those companies did an IPO in the last month or so and raised $530 million. And the prospectus includes a big statement about the contract that they have with the state of Connecticut as a rationale for why people should invest in their plan.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. And as looking at the public option in the, so is there, I know for the private sector, they have reserve requirements and oversight in that regard by the insurance department. Are there similar provisions anticipated in your model of the public option plan of similar amounts of mandated reserves to ensure viability of the plan over time?
So this is a self-insured plan. Again, it's not an apples to apples comparison. In a fully insured plan where companies are taking significant premium from folks, you want to make sure that they're putting it aside so that they can pay claims. This is different, and self-insured plans are different. But the statute proposed, the bill, is very clear that through a combination of stop loss, private stop loss insurance, and reserving, we will make sure that the people of Connecticut are protected from any risk at all. Again, perhaps a finance question, perhaps an interesting question, but when it comes to how much money do you need as an Appropriations Committee member to put aside for us to stand this up, I don't think that's a problem.
I guess final question. You mentioned stop loss policies. Is in that effort, what is there? I guess risk of not knowing when standing up a new program, a new public option, and potentially not being able to get a stop loss policy. I'm not familiar enough with the area where that risk would then, after a bill was passed, you're unable to get a stop loss policy. Then we would have a risk to the taxpayers potentially. I don't know.
Well, if the statute, if the bill and then the statute says that we have to have a stop loss policy, if we're unable to get one, we would need to come back to you to seek a change in the law. We would not be able to stand one up. But I will say, Representative France, that the opponents of the public option, the corporate opponents of the public option, are often the same people that will whisper in my ear when they see me at the Capitol or call me in the office and say, hey, but just by the way, if this goes, we'd love to be in business with you on this, would love to have your business. So, at the end of the day, it's a commercial decision that gets made, and I am confident we would have multiple competitive bids for stop loss.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Representative. Other questions from members of the committee? I don't see any hands up at this time. So yes, Representative McCarty. Now I see a hand up.
No, that was my fault. I couldn't get over. Welcome, Kevin Lembo, to our meeting today. Would you just mention, just if you would, for my own edification, what is the role of and who makes up the Healthcare Cost Containment Committee? If you could just speak to that for a moment.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Healthcare Cost Containment Committee is a creation of statute and also reflected in the collective bargaining agreements. It's a labor management group, but there are other voices at the table. For example, a municipal employer, has a voice at that table. And this is the group that we have to take many of the decisions back to. And it includes actuaries and employees and others. And we hash out those decisions that come before them. So like, for example, in the question of like, do we take everyone who comes in an effort to protect us from having people wash bad claims through our plan, right? Just send their sick employees and keep their healthy employees for themselves. It gives me latitude to analyze that and recommend a denial, but then I have to take it to the Healthcare Cost Containment Committee, and they have to, within a certain period of time, either agree or disagree with that action. So whether I'm the comptroller or there's one after me or 100 after me, hopefully this issue will be resolved by then. There will always be a check and balance in as much as that's concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Controller.
Good to see you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative. Other comments or questions from members of the subcommittee? Going once. Going twice. Thank you, Comptroller, for gracing us with your presence again this afternoon.
Thank you, Senator. Good to see you all. And if there are any questions about the written material, please just push those back through to us and we'll provide clarification.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Madam Administrator, who do we have next, and what are they scheduled at 2:30?
We have the Department of Revenue Services, and they are actually scheduled at 3.
So we have a 30-minute stretch, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, we will see all of you bright and early at 3 p.m. And the subcommittee stands in recess.
Madam Chair, if you're wondering why it's so quiet, we're in recess until 3.
I can get in. You are using computer audio. All right. I think people can hear me now. No, I just wanted to make sure you could hear me. I'm going to mute it now.
I can hear you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good. Are you talking to me or Representative Baker?
To both of you. I didn't see Representative Baker until just now, but I was going to say we can get started since everybody's sitting right here staring at each other.
Fine with, I will do whatever the chair suggests. I think that sounds lovely. Do we have DRS in the room?
Yes,
They are.
I believe they are.
Wonderful. Thank you. We did get some written testimony, I know, or answers to questions from DRS on some questions, and do they want to walk us through any of those responses? I'm sure we'll have questions from members of the committee. I want to thank you to everyone for pushing back or giving us an extra month to do our tax returns.
Well, you're welcome, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know if you were waiting for us to respond to you.
No, it's just a joke. Thank you, Commissioner. And I just, did you want to walk through your question, the responses to the questions that have been sent?
Sure, I'll just do that briefly. And if anybody has follow-up, I have our staff here with us as well. Deputy Director John Biello, Legal Counsel Luca Cari, Susan. Everybody knows Susan Sherman. She's here, and our CFO Teresa Peterson is with us as well. So between all of us, we should get you all the answers you need. But basically, the first question had to do with how many positions do you have, what's authorized, what's filled, what's vacant. So we were authorized at 627 for FY 2021. We funded 571. We filled 550. That includes 7 HR staff that are connected to DAS, as you know, as our business partners. We have vacant 77 at this time. Awaiting refill is 21. Those have been approved already, and 6 are pending. We've sent over submissions for approval. So one of the things I'm learning is that, you know, given the retirement cliff, we are seeing a significant amount of retirements in the department. We are also looking at it as an opportunity to reorganize and to basically create a little bit better organization, a little bit tighter organization, less silos, and to be able to spread duties out amongst more to get the same amount of work through with less people. There was a question about the breakdown of the total amount of COVID relief funds that we've received. That number was $512,896. The vast bulk of that went to laptops that people log into our VPN with. There's some headsets that are in there, some of the Wi-Fi dongles that are there. We've had $2,200 worth of video conferencing, and then $24,000 of PPE. Those are masks, wipes, things like that, hand lotion, etc. There was a question about the proposed captive insurers initiative that's floating out there. We don't have a lot of information on that, so we're really going to defer to OPM for them to develop data for that in terms of what that impact would be. So there's been questions about, well, tell us a little bit about your auditing. How many audits have you done? Where do you see that going? So assessment data, the number of audits and amounts assessed, and this is all actions. John Biello, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is all actions that we did as of June 30th, 2020. It was 82,844, which amounted to roughly $360 million of recovery in dollars. As of FY, the full year, non-COVID year, on June 30, 2019, we did 197,000 enforcement actions, and that roughly amounted to $660 million. In 18, we did 166,000, and in 17, we did 167,000. So we range anywhere between roughly right around the 200,000 mark, a little bit under 200,000 in terms of a typical year. Obviously, this year we want to be sensitive to COVID and what people are going through out there, and so we've been really going extra hard to work with people to try to get them to, you know, pay their obligation, but also giving them payment plans and strategies like that, or just frankly deferring payment until they're capable and able to pay. We had a question about the details of the proposed Bridgeport office closure, and what that would, you know, what's saving, how many people are there, what are we talking about here? There are 2 employees that are there, Terry, correct me if I'm wrong on this. The rent that we pay is roughly $21,000. We pay $10,000 worth of electricity in that space. The expenses are $26,000 for the year. Office supplies, this is for the entire agency. We don't break it out necessarily by individual section. It's $27,986. Out-of-state travel is a flat $25,000, but that's for the whole agency, not just for Bridgeport. We just believe that we can provide, mainly that we're using a lot of telework strategies. We can provide the same services to the folks in the Bridgeport area, utilizing also new technology as well as our nonprofit partners, Connecticut Library Association, the Town Clerks Association, and VITA, which has been very, very successful at helping people fill out their income tax forms and filing the appropriate information. So that's pretty much our responses to the questions that were raised during our piece of the approach hearing. With that, we certainly are open to questions and discussions about any other items that you might have out there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there questions from members of the committee, subcommittee? Representative Baker, does that answer your questions about the Bridgeport office?
I can't get my hand up, so can't get my hand raised. So, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Chair?
Representative.
Yeah, I had some questions in regards to the when you look for year 2020 and you're looking to do the tax amnesty program, and you talk about what kind of marketing are you proposing that's going to cost like $560,000?
Well, you'll see everything from radio ads, print ads, obviously a lot of digital product. That's a medium now that's been very successful. Letting people know that they can come in and get a waiver on any penalties and pay a very modest interest to get them back into the system. So we're going to use all of those tools. At $560,000, given the new digital age, we can stretch that pretty far to get information out to people and let them know how to participate in the amnesty program.
Okay. Then you have technology. So the technology is going to be, what is that going to be? Give me the description of what technology you're going to be using.
Is that for the amnesty program, Representative, or technology in general?
Well, it looks like that's part of it, the program, because it's technology 350, you got postage 150, and then you have a overtime fee. I'm wondering, is that all part of that additional money for the program itself? And then you have miscellaneous costs of $500,000.
Sure, I'll defer to
$5,000.
I'll defer to our CFO, Terry, if you have the answer on that. I don't have it right in front of me, that piece of the budget. You're on mute, Terry.
Okay, thank you. Representative, I think that that format for technology, and I think that our Deputy Commissioner can fill me in if I'm wrong, is for the laptops and the computer equipment to get the programming going.
That's for technology?
Yes.
Okay. Is that on top of technology that you're using now?
Yes, it's in addition to.
Okay. And now in terms of overtime, is that just projected overtime that you needed to review cases, or what would that consist of? Just, contacting people outside of the normal work hours?
I believe so, but I think the Deputy Commissioner, I will refer to you.
Yes. Thanks, Representative Baker. All of those numbers that you see there that are proposed for the amnesty program are based on the program that we ran in 2013. Those are all in line with the expenses and costs that we had back in the amnesty program that was run in 2013. So, for example, the advertising cost that you mentioned, that was for paid media advertising that we ran in 2013. For example, we ran over 8,000 radio spots in 2013, and there was over 28 million media impressions that were realized as a result of that media spend. And as a result, we brought in $193 million in that amnesty program when we only had 35 million budgeted. So our data shows that the media spend is highly effective in that 2013 amnesty program. And we're proposing the same type of a spend if this program in 2021 gets approved.
Yeah. So right now, what are you looking at that is owed to the state right about now, if you could estimate, and back taxes and at this particular time?
That's a good question. And I wish I can give you a real solid answer on that, but I could talk about how the 2013 program ran. There were really three categories that we looked at in the 2013 program. We looked at filers, taxpayers who had a return that didn't, return filing requirement and file. We looked at under reporters, so taxpayers who actually filed a return and didn't report everything that was due. And then we dealt with existing audit and appellate cases. So those are really the three buckets of taxpayers or issues that we addressed with the 2013 program. The one that generated the most amount of revenue for us, interestingly enough, were the underreporters. 48% of the dollars that were collected in the 2013 program were for taxpayers that underreported. And like I said, the 193 million was the total amount that we brought. So I hope that answers your question. I know I'm not giving you the total amount. That's a tough number to put our fingers on because we just don't know how much is being underreported until we actually get in there and do some compliance activities like audit and things like that. But it's significant. It's significant.
Yeah, well, because I was just trying to get an understanding how much you projecting that you will recover, and then with the offset on the on how much money you're going to be spending to try to recover this money, or if it's just beneficial for you maybe just to get a jump on things now and really get aggressive with really working with people that owe taxes and as you sort of work out reasonable not only payments but greater more payoffs and say, hey, we'll do this. Is there a certain percentage that you look at when when the person comes to say, I want to pay my taxes in full, I owe this much? Do you have a percentage number that you work with right off the top, or it's just case by case?
It's usually case by case, Representative, but we also will look at what the total dollar volume is. Obviously, if you're owing, in our estimation, millions of dollars, that's one thing versus somebody that might be owing $36.12, which actually we had come across our desk a couple of weeks ago. So in those cases, it's not necessarily something that we'll focus in on. We really are working at triaging these cases to get the real heavy hitters, the people where there's a lot of money in dispute first, and then to work our way back. And it does go by case by case. Somebody may struggle with a $40 bill, and they may say, look, I need 3 months to pay it off or 4 months to pay it off. Okay, pay us $10 a month until you're clear. I mean, we literally will make those kinds of accommodations given what people are going through right now.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, Commissioner. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Just wanted to see, so I know that the administration is again recommending that we delay funding of the tax incident study. If we were to do that, if we were to fund that, would the department have the ability to conduct that study?
Senator, we can do anything that you ask us to do. We recognize what our role is there. If you fund it and you want it done, we'll get it done. We're just looking at our workflow, given the retirement cliff and the fact we're trying to spin up this new analytics division. That's a heavy lift for us all at once, and that's why we're asking for the delay.
Okay, I'm just mindful of the fact that we have delayed it over and over and over again. And if we do have one-time revenues this year, that might be something we might want to
absolutely
to consider. Do you have I guess on both ends in terms of the tax amnesty and well, I guess in terms of the tax amnesty, do you have a sense from the last time that was done what the average amount amnestied was? Is this something that disproportionately benefits a particular class of taxpayer?
Well, I do know, going back to Rep. Baker's question, we did program $40 million in recovery for the next year in the biennium. That's our target. We think we'll do much better than that, but again, we don't want to overpromise either. But in terms of who that encompasses, I'm going to ask John to address that, what their average case is and who do they see walking through the door. John?
Sure. It really, because the amnesty program impacts all tax types, it's hard to say that there was an average dollar amount for, say, individual income tax. For example, I'm looking at the stats from our last program that was generated. $94 million of the 193 came from corporations. So corporations that owed us the corporation business tax paid a bulk of the amnesty dollars that came in 2013. Sales tax was also substantial. These numbers are so small. Either that or my eyes are getting worse and worse as I age here. That looks like it was about another 30 million came from sales tax. So the bulk of the dollars that came in were in fact business taxes that were owed to us. Individual income tax was about 24 million of the total. So relatively small when compared to the rest of the tax types that paid in the last program.
Sorry, struggling to get to the mute button. And do you have a sense, I guess similarly, I know there was an analysis by IRS that found that the most heavily audited region of the country was the Mississippi Delta, which is also one of the poorest parts of the country. Do you have a sense on who you are auditing? Is that something that is equitably distributed across Connecticut's taxpayers, or is it concentrated in one particular demographic or one type of filer?
I would say from a broad perspective, we generally target categories more than we target areas or regions or even income levels. In other words, we may look at sales and use tax one year. The next year, we may look at excise tax or corporate filings. It generally depends on that. One of the things that the analytics division that we're proposing will do, we'll be able to use algorithms and artificial intelligence to tell us and give us direction as to where, what, when, and why to audit, and where we'll get the greatest return on deploying our staff to do that. But John, I didn't know if you wanted to touch, and John used to head up the auditing side of the house, so he's got a lot of knowledge on this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Commissioners, that we base our audit selection programs on just that, on projects and on programs, not based on demographics or physical location or anything like that. We base it purely on the data that we have available to us.
Thank you. I see Representative Dathan has a question.
Thank you so much. In fact, Senator, you started with my question. In the initials, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Apologies for not saying hi first. I wanted to follow up on my questions from the last time, which was around the audit. You did talk about this new software that you're implementing, which I'm looking forward to hear. And I'm sorry if I missed this because my reception went in and out for a bit. But I noticed there was a big jump between fiscal year 2019 and 20 with 197 audits down to 82. And it looks like it was, pretty consistent between 18 and 17. Just wondering if this was an effect of COVID, or is this due to the nature of the audit? Like, presumably, if you're doing a sales tax audit, you would be covering a larger sample size than you might in an individual audit. So I was just wondering if what are the drivers of those changes?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the nature of the audit sometimes can drive how many you do because some of them are more time consuming than others, but really
Right.
that's a reflection of COVID and us trying to be a little bit sympathetic and empathetic to people that are going through a difficult time. And John, I don't know if you wanted to add into that at all, but.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Commissioner. The decline there, the sharp decline between 19 and 20 was purely due to COVID. Around this time last year, everything really came to a halt, and we ceased any audits that were in progress or any new audits, and we didn't start up again with audits until late in 2020. So that COVID is the sole reason for the decline in the number of cases done in 2020.
Great. Thank you for that explanation, John. That's really helpful. Presumably, if you wanted to open up and do some more audits on fiscal year 2020, you would still be able to do that? Or are you going to be relying a little bit more on the software and the statistics that's coming out of that program?
We've since restarted our auditing program again with an eye of compassion, but we have our auditing team. It has active files, so working on them. We are monitoring them on a weekly basis, meeting with our team to see what progress they're making on files. However, the delay you'll probably see a greater hit next year in the stats that we report back because a 3 or 4 month delay can drive us into the next fiscal year in terms of getting a resolution. But we're back at it. And again, we're trying to be sensitive to the situation that's going on out there. John, I don't know if you want to add on to that.
Yep, no, that's exactly it. We've started up again, and although we're not at full capacity as we were prior to the pandemic, like Commissioner said, we're working with taxpayers and being sympathetic to their needs during this time. So although we are auditing, we're having those conversations with taxpayers prior to actually starting the case.
Okay, and just to confirm, we've extended our individual filing deadline to the same period as the feds, is that right?
That's correct. Because we mirror the IRS and that we work our filings off of the AGI, makes the most sense for us to make our deadline May 17th as well.
That's what I heard. And then my last question is about the software that you're using for this analytical to determine sort of either audits, or when is that going to be fully implemented? And what was did you guys build it yourself, or is it white labeled software of some sort, or?
Well, it's a combination of people, and we'll be hiring up 6 or 7 people to fill out this unit, as well as software tools, data that's readily available, data that we already are in possession of within DRS that we just have been siloed off with, data from the IRS that we can access, as well as other information that you can actually find out there in the World Wide Web. And we're using instruments and tools that other states are now currently using. There are 7 other states that have developed these units within their Revenue Services Department, including New York City and the IRS as well. They already have some of the software that's available. We'll be developing some of our own that will be unique to Connecticut. And the idea here is to do 2 things, right? It's to be able to triage our greatest amount, where is the greatest amount of dollars in terms of what we do audit. So we don't spend 2 years trying to collect $5,000. We spend 2 years trying to collect $15 million. And then the second piece of that is where are people not paying their full liability? Can we identify people that can become stakeholders in our system, or businesses or entities that haven't paid, forgot, didn't know, wasn't sure, or didn't pay their full liability? We'll be able to look at all those different things through artificial intelligence, and there already are current algorithms out there that you can use to determine that. And that'll help guide our decision-making process. Will make us much more efficient, and we'll leave a lot less money on the table. And that means that you all don't have to have such a difficult discussion about whether or not you should have to raise taxes. We're programming about a $45 million lift in next year's budget. So we plan on having this operational for the next fiscal year. John and I and our team have a lot of work to do all summer and the fall. It's going to take us about 6 to 8 months to spin this up. And once we get everything running, we invite you, encourage you to meet with us or do a Zoom call or stop by, and we can show you exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think for those out there that are interested in this stuff, you'll find it fascinating.
Thank you very much. I think you asked the wrong CPA to come out and check out what's going on with DRS. I will take you up on that offer. Don't want you to hurt your launch into this. So just let me know when's a good time for you, but I'm very interested. Thank you so much for your discussion, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Are there other questions from members of the subcommittee? Surely there must be some. If not, Commissioner, thank you for coming before us. We really appreciate the answers to your questions. And again, the extra month to get our tax returns in, I'm sure will be helpful to members of the Appropriations Committee who have a lot in the next couple of weeks.
Me too, Senator. So
I'm sure you too. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Talk soon.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to let the folks in from the treasurer's office?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
All right, we have a phone number here. So when I let them all in, I'm going to, if I may be indulged, I need to ask for that person to identify themselves. So I need to please ask the members of the team from the treasurer's office. I have admitted a phone number 860-521-4139. Does that belong to any member of the treasurer's office team?
Yes, it does. This is Maria Greenslade, Assistant Treasurer for the Second Injury Fund and Unclaimed Property.
Great, thank you, Maria. Ready when you are, Mr. Chair.
Terrific. I think we will get started then. Have we been joined by the treasurer, or who's the senior official from the treasurer's office who will be presenting?
Good afternoon, Senator Lessard. Deputy Treasurer Darrell Hill.
Good to see you, Deputy Treasurer. How are you?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Terrific. So just wanted to open it up in the interest of expedience. I know we've heard from you before. Are there questions from members of the committee, or any questions that you heard from us that you'd like to answer today?
I believe that we've provided responses in writing to the questions we previously received, and welcome any questions that the committee has today.
Would you like to go through them? I have your answers in front of me, but anything that you want to gloss over for? I know you provided the SIRS ADAC comparison and specific questions about personnel, about CARES Act funding, debt savings from improved credit. Do you want to just walk us through that? There's not a lot there.
Sure. The personnel information as it was provided reflects the total FTEs of 155. At the time this information was presented, we had 122 filled positions. I phrase it that way because we had a new employee start last Friday. So we're actually at 123 filled positions with 32 vacant. The CARES Act stimulus money was asked during the treasurer's testimony. In writing, we provided that just under 1.4 billion that was received in two transactions or two payments that the state received of the 699 million each. There's a decimal place or two there off. That coupled with the 235 million for rental relief received in December brings the total to just over 1.63 billion. That second paragraph or sentence under the CARES Act stimulus funding for monies that the Treasurer's Office has been reimbursed by OPM primarily reflects technology to support remote working. There is a pending balance for the installation of polycarbonate or plexiglass throughout the office, as since the beginning of COVID and continuing, we have a good contingent of staff in the office as their work is paper-based. So we'll see, I think our request to OPM is still pending in the neighborhood of $130,000 for reimbursement from CARES Act funding. The third of four questions was relative to or related to debt service savings from refundings, specifically the improvements to the state's credit outlook, the estimates, and their estimates because of the difference between the actual pricing numbers and the extrapolation, if you will, of what it would have been had we not received those positive outlooks. But we've quantified that to be just under $46 million. And lastly, the SERS level dollar phase-in that's included in the governor's proposed budget. There's a text write-up in two short paragraphs, but there's also an accompanying one-pager that shows a table with a graphic at the top. I'll speak to the graphic as it's probably the easiest way to see the difference between the blue line, which is the current ADAC, and the, we'll call it mustard line, which is the governor's proposal. So if you're looking at that graphic, you'll see the reductions in the first several years where the mustard line is below the blue line. And then for the remaining years, the mustard line is above the blue line to in part compensate for the present value of the cash flows over such a long time horizon out through 2047. And those were the four questions that we responded to from the prior testimony. If there are any additional questions related to those or any other matters, we are a Treasury team assembled and stand ready to respond.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your use of mustard. It's an unusual color in a graph. But just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, we were trying to get our heads around the proposed delayed remuneraization. And it looks like the extra cost of the taxpayer over 25 years will be about $320,555,698. Is that right?
That's in the absolute dollars, yes. And I say absolute because the present value would be lower than that.
So I'm sorry, that's assuming you're assuming inflation. So this, or not. When you say absolute dollars, I just want to make sure I understand what that is.
This presentation shows the difference dollar for dollar in the years shown through 2047. If we were to present value them back to today's dollars, it would be a lower number based on the discount factor.
Got it. Okay. And my understanding is that we would be precluded from using American Rescue Plan dollars to supplant service contributions. As far I don't know. This may be something I don't know if you've looked at or not, but we would not be able to use that money for that purpose. As far as you know.
I believe that's correct. One of the call outs in the federal legislation is that it not be used to make pension payments.
Got it. But the immediate savings, the immediate hole in the budget, if we were to replace that, would be 74 million in fiscal year 2022. So that would be pretty, and 147 million in 23. So pretty sizable hole that would be filling.
Yes, those amounts aggregate to, what's that, roughly 325 million over the biennium.
Is there
200, not 300?
Yeah. Would you have is there a way to do this better? One that has less of a, I mean, I assume we could structure it however we wanted to, but is there a way to do this in a way that the treasurer's office thinks would be more, fiscally sustainable?
Well, the treasurer recognizes the budget challenges in the next biennium and even projecting forward. I think the benefit of the level dollar approach for SERS speaks to itself. And while it's a little bit slower in achieving that, it does get to the same end, if you will, which is the 100% funded over the 2047 time horizon.
Got it. Are there questions from members of the subcommittee? Oh, yes, there are a bunch. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question in regards to your debt service. I know we had talked about it before in terms of there's a drastic increase. Can you just elaborate a little more on that and just kind of refresh me?
Sure, I'll provide some introductory remarks and then turn it over to Sarah Sanders, our Assistant Treasurer for Debt Management. The state of Connecticut has a conservative approach to debt management. That's most evident by the fact that we amortize our principal on a level principal basis as opposed to a level debt service basis. That level principal, the same amount of principal for each bond issue gets repaid over the 20-year horizon. Mm-hmm. What that results in from a debt service perspective is on a graphic facing you all, a declining debt service payment. So your highest amount is paid in year one, and then each year it's lower. That is because of the level principal structure.
So are we reallocating, or are we starting all over again, is what you're saying?
No, I mean, with each bond issue, and of course the state issues hundreds of millions of dollars, a couple billion, just under a couple of billion each year in recent years. And over the past 20 years, there is still debt service remaining from each of the issues over the prior 19 years. So as each layers onto itself, that, I'll call it a ski slope, that downward slope of our debt service payments over the remaining years is natural for and conservative for how we issue debt and repay that debt. Okay,
so if I'm looking at your for instance, some of your debt services. So UConn 20,000. Okay, their debt service was in year 22. It's going to be more of a in the negative. Is that correct? It's 11 million. And then you're looking at 2023, it's 2 million.
Sarah, do you have that?
Sure, I'm looking at the schedule in the governor's budget book, and it shows UConn in 21 going from 200 million to 209 million in 22 and 223 million in 23. So I think it's increasing each year.
I know it talks a little bit about the cause of the decrease based on the factors and stuff. Are they borrowing more money for this particular program?
No, actually, their last bond issue was delayed 6 months, and the whole Yukon program is coming to an end in just a couple more years. You know, it's a long-term program, and the last couple of years tail off quite a bit. So I wouldn't say they're borrowing more, but they used to have spring bond issues, and we've moved them to the fall because of actually issuing a little later than they originally had planned. But what I'm seeing here is it does show an increase each year.
What would be the amount that they still owe on the debt service, and when exactly is it due to end?
I have to check on the final year. It's just a few more years out.
Okay.
Let me just see.
You can get back to us.
Okay. They do go into fiscal year 24, but their outstanding amount as of June 30th last year is 1.5 billion that they owe.
1.5 billion?
Years of bonding. 1.5 billion as of June 30th.
Okay.
Last year. We tend to measure on June 30th because throughout the year things change.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
To clarify, the decrease is from in the budget sheets. It's showing a decrease from the fiscal 21 appropriation. So the actual amount that was spent was significantly lower in 21, but the appropriation was 221 million. So the budget sheet shows a decrease of 11 something million from that appropriated level. So it's up slightly from actual spending because of some savings and delay. But the sheet itself is showing based on the appropriated level, which was quite a bit higher.
Okay, I think it's because the budget sheet I'm looking at is estimated for 21 and you're looking at appropriated for 21. So it's a different base.
Okay.
There was a delay.
All right. But thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no questions at this time.
Thank you, Representative Dathan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Deputy Commissioner, for your presentation. I have a quick question. When we pay extra into any of our pension retirement funds due to being above our 15% that goes into the rainy day fund, how are those dollars allocated? Are they, do you re-amortize the ADAX for the relevant payments in? And how do you allocate the dollars into each of the pension funds? Under what method?
So if I understand your question correctly, the excess monies from the budget reserve fund calculation, I believe the statute gives the treasurer a decision to make on whether it is applied to, we call it SURF or TURF. Teachers or state teachers or state employees. The treasurer's prior decision was to contribute to the, correct me, the TURF. Is that correct, Steve? The teachers, or is it state employees?
Senator Hill, Steve has sent me a text. He's having problems getting in. He can't speak out.
Sure, and so and I apologize.
You can get back to me if you're not 100% sure. It's because it doesn't really have any implications on your budget. It's more of a,
that's correct.
I'm just trying to get an understanding how it works so that we can think, is it, does it matter which fund it goes into? And then how do we re-amortize the ADAC based on that additional monies that are coming in? And where do we get the most benefit? And, kind of looking at, I get concerned that we're, extending this. I mean, I see the need, but, I understand that we're spending, $320 million cumulatively. I understand the net present value of that is probably 200 billion. I don't know I didn't hear if you all gave a net present value of that number, but, it is there is definitely a cost. So I get concerned that we're doing that. And I'm, hopeful that, with, surpluses, we'd be able to help minimize that cumulative effect of these changes.
Sure, and the decision again on which of the two systems any excess would be contributed to is the treasurer's decision. There is not a prescribed either or both. It's at the treasurer's discretion for which one. Once that contribution is made, it's treated similar to any excess or contributions in the annual calculations and the more robust calculations that I believe occur on a 5-year interval. The ADEX going forward would be adjusted accordingly based on the actual contributions and the actual disbursements from either system.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. My second question has to do with bond ratings. In terms of, many states are suffering now with COVID. We've, with the recent care package, the recent one, it is, helping a lot of the states. What is the outlook for your office about how our bond rating is going to be impacted comparing us to other states?
Well, Connecticut has fared very well through COVID. We have a very strong cash position, and since the onset of COVID, where I think it's fair to say that essentially everything was put on notice. Connecticut's ratings have been stable. Our ratings and our outlooks have actually been improved. That was part of the written response provided previously. So as we all collectively, Connecticut, go about managing our finances and the conversation with the rating agencies about their opinion of Connecticut's fiscal stability, we feel good about where Connecticut is and where our future ratings will be, particularly relative to other states. We, compared to neighbors and others across the country, have and continue to fare much better with regard to our long-term ratings. And we expect that to continue into the future. I say that last part as clear as our crystal ball, which is always cloudy can be, right? We don't know what tomorrow holds. So given what we know now, we have a very good feeling about maintaining and potentially enhancing our ratings going forward.
Great, that's good to hear. Thank you so much again. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Other questions from members of the subcommittee? Going once, going twice. If not, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Treasurer, and to all your staff for your work and your cooperation with the subcommittee.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, committee members.
And thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Madam Administrator, what is our schedule at this point?
The next agency, Mr. Chair, is the Office of the Attorney General. They are not in the waiting room yet. They're scheduled for 4 o'clock, and then OPM is scheduled for 4:30.
We will wait with bated breath. See you everyone in about 14 minutes. Good afternoon, Nicole. Are we being, do you know if we're being joined by the Attorney General, or are you going to be representing the office?
Hi, Senator. We actually have our Deputy Attorney General, Peggy Chappell, is on, and our, I'm going to get her title wrong, but our Assistant Deputy Attorney General, Antoria Howard, and I think Antoria will be leading our responses.
Great. Just wait for a couple of minutes for members to join.
I see that Antoria Howard has joined us, so we're ready to begin whenever you're ready.
Representative Baker, are you there yet? Make sure that Representative Baker is available if he can be. Since it is 4:01, let's get started, and Representative Baker can join us in progress if he's available. Thank you, Madam Deputy Attorney General, for joining us today. And if you could please introduce your team. I know Nicole just gave a brief overview, but if you can do that, and also appreciate the answers to the questions that we had submitted, mostly on position counts.
Sure. I'm Margaret Chappell, Deputy Attorney General. Antoria Howard is, was Associate Attorney General, has moved into a different position as a Deputy, Assistant Deputy Attorney General. Nicole Lake, our Counselor to the Attorney General and Legislative Director, is here. And I believe Healy from our business office is here. I don't see Sue Kavanaugh, our HR Director. I'm not sure if she's joining us, but thank you for giving us the opportunity to answer your questions this afternoon.
Thank you. Do you want to, I'm going to open it up to questions from members, but do you want to walk us through some of the written responses that we received?
Sure. One of the questions was the number of positions that we had that were paid by sources outside of the general fund. And we have 28 of those positions. 25 of them are filled, 15 are attorney positions, 10 are support staff positions. 3 are currently vacant.
Two of the positions are in our workers' comp section, one attorney, one paralegal. We are in the process of filling those positions. I believe we have authorization to fill those. We also have a durational attorney and paralegal who are funded by the Chase Fund. The attorney position is filled. The paralegal position is not filled at this time. With respect to the number of attorney positions outside of the state budget, as I said, there were 15 positions. The cost is approximately $2 million for those positions. With respect to the general fund positions, we have 312. We have a total of 352 positions, including the positions funded from outside. So 186 AAGs are general fund positions. 22 of those positions are vacant. We have 88 support staff positions filled, 15 support staff positions are vacant, for a total of 311 general fund positions. In addition, we have some part-time and temporary retirees. We have 8 part-time attorney positions, 2 support staff who are working part-time, and we have 3 temporary retirees, all of whom are attorneys. I'm sorry, 2 attorneys, 1 paralegal. There were also some questions about our plans for the 10 AAG positions that we currently have authorization to refill. Actually, they're not all AAGs, but we have filled 3 of them so far. 2 of the attorneys went to our child protection department. 1 is going to our public safety section. We are currently recruiting and interviewing AAGs for antitrust, special litigation, workers' compensation, and labor. We are also recruiting a secretary for administration for a position that was vacated some time ago, and for an IT person to replace someone who retired. We recently had 3 attorneys nominated to the bench. We expect that they will be leaving us within the next couple of weeks. We have 4 additional attorneys that we expect to retire sometime between now and the middle of the year. Those are the ones that we know about, and we will be seeking, refill authority for those positions. With respect to agreements, we have provided a copy of a couple of agreements that you had asked about. Those are attached to the document. We estimate that from July 1st of 2020 to the present, we have settled cases which have resulted in $151.8 million going into the general fund, which included the tobacco fund monies that are due in April of 21. We have the tobacco settlement is the one settlement that we expect will continue to generate significant revenue for future years. We have one small environmental agreement, DEEP versus RRR maintenance, where the state's been receiving $555 monthly since 2020 and will continue through 2023. I know you had also asked about money that we expected from the opioid settlements. At present time, we are still engaged in settlement discussions with Purdue. Purdue, the company, is currently in bankruptcy, and we are actively participating in the bankruptcy negotiations. In addition, the states, we are one of the states that are negotiating a settlement with the Sackler family, the former owners of Purdue. Those negotiations are ongoing, and it's just not possible to predict at this point what the outcome will be and what the dollars will look like. The other major opioid case involves 4 major opioid distributors. Negotiations are still ongoing, but are progressing. We do expect to see those negotiations wrap up hopefully in the next couple of months. But again, I can't say at this point what the dollar amounts will be that the state will be receiving. We did enter into a settlement agreement with McKinsey Consulting on an opioid-related matter. The state will be receiving a total of $7.3 million from that settlement. We expect to receive $320,000. I'm sorry, we expect to receive $6.4 million on April 4th of this year. And then thereafter, $320,000 for each of the next 2 years, and a final payment of $306,000 in year 4. And I think that covers most of what you were asking for, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. And I see we've got a question from Representative Bacon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. 2 quick questions. I know, and thank you so much for going through the details that you did on the where you need to hire and the sort of number of vacancies and filled that you have. That's really useful. Just wanted to ask, with the change in the formation of the labor in contracts in 2019 in the Attorney General's office, has that facilitated the state's ability to hire attorneys for those positions?
I wouldn't say there's really been any change in the hiring process since the collective bargaining agreements were signed. Things are pretty much status quo. And Tori, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree. The only thing is that the salary has increased, which again can be advantageous to people who want to come work for the state.
For the people that are looking at those roles, how do we sit in terms of salary compared to some of the other positions we're competing to find talent for? Are we competitive, or are we still under? What is the reason that some of our candidates don't come work for the Attorney General's office?
I think we're very competitive. Across the country, we're one of the highest paid Attorney General's office is in the country. So I think we're pretty competitive. Of course, our attorneys don't make as much as some of the corporations in Connecticut. Due to COVID last year and this year, we've seen an increase in some attorneys who are in private practice wanting to come to the state. And we're getting some really good candidates in that regards. But again, I don't think we can compete with some of the private, bigger law firms. Some of the smaller law firms, yes, we can compete. And we do get really good candidates. We do get really good candidates in that regards from those law firms also. We also really we get some really excellent clerks coming out of the appellate court and the Supreme Court. They will come to us as assistant attorneys general ones, but they're we're able to train them and they become really good attorneys. We've had several who are still with us and have been really good attorneys. So I believe we are or can be competitive with the in the market.
Well, I'm glad not losing talent as a result of this, and that we're right in the middle. I mean, I know, in the Northeast, we're competing with Boston and in New York City, so that's hard to compete for talent sometimes.
I think what we've seen over the years is a bit of salary compression. So we have a pretty competitive entry level salary, but the top end of the salary ranges tend to be a little bit compressed, and that's been an issue, but we really haven't seen a problem retaining attorneys.
Thank you for that. And then thank you for your response to the question that I had regarding settlements going forward. Just one, just two little questions around that. You have in your under 4, from July 1, 2020 to present, we have almost 152 million into the general fund. But underneath the chart, you say that we're the estimated fiscal year 21 payment to the state from the tobacco fund is 132. So do we have to sometimes pay back money, or why would there be a decrease of almost $20 million?
The 151 included other settlements that we have entered into since the fiscal year began. Yes, and the 132, that's the estimated payment for the tobacco. We could get a little more, but it's usually never less than what that estimate is.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. I don't want to read the 249-page document. I trust that you guys are better at that than I am. But just what are the terms, and how long will that that contract and those payments come into the state for? And they look pretty consistent. Can you summarize in maybe one sentence how the amount is calculated?
Honestly, I honestly don't know. I know it's a complicated formula. Each state gets a different amount. Each signatory to the master settlement agreement gets a different amount. I could have the attorney give you one sentence who actually knows a little bit.
I mean, it looks pretty consistent. But my main question is, for how many more years is that agreement in effect for?
I believe it's for, it goes for quite a while. I'm not sure if there's any ending date in it, but I can double check that. Yeah.
If you can double check, and then likewise, if there's any restrictions on the settlement money, does it have to go pay for tobacco prevention in youth or something like that? So those are my two sort of open questions, and it's not urgent that I get this, straight away. So just, I would love to know in the next future time frame how that works, just out of my own curiosity. Thank you so much, Assistant, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. And I don't normally answer questions on behalf of the Office of Attorney General, but I do happen to have the master settlement in front, and I believe the terms are in perpetuity. So perpetuity is a long time, but
that sounds really good to me. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I like perpetuity for money coming in.
And I think I can answer the second part of the question, which is that the money does not need to be used for abatement of smoking, et cetera, which is kind of one of the criticisms of the agreement. The money does go into the general fund.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your response, and I hope you have a nice weekend. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. I appreciate you detailing some of the pending actions and settlement talks that may come into play in the next few months. Are there specific, I don't know that we need to know the gory details, but is there specific budgetary considerations we should be concerned about in the other direction in terms of of settlements in the other direction that could come into play as we start to, solidify the state budget. And I guess also was curious if you'd had taken a look at relief funds available to the state, either CARES Act or American Rescue Plan. I don't know if they are, I would assume that they're restricted for the use of settlements, but I wasn't sure if we had settlements or judgments, or if we had something to work with there.
I'm not aware of any such restrictions, Antoria.
No, I'm not aware of any either.
But as we're sort of looking forward and trying to sort of understand the impact of judgments and settlements in both directions, is there anything that we should sort of be mindful of as appropriators? So we don't want to micromanage your office's decision making. I just want to make sure that we don't have unexpected surprises in any direction.
Yeah, as part of our work on this state bonding issues, we're required to submit a litigation statement that provides a list of any settlements or judgments that could exceed certain thresholds. I'm happy to provide you with that information that might answer your question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions from members of the committee? If not, well, I hope all of you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, and you also.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Administrator, is OPM available, or are we still?
No, we're waiting for the team. There are only 2 out of the 8 or 10 members of the team in the waiting room at the moment. And Secretary McCaw is not one of them.
So we're not expecting Secretary McCaw.
We are expecting Secretary McCaw.
Oh,
She's not one of the 2 people in the waiting room.
Oh, got it.
He ended a little early with the Office of Attorney General.
We're efficient.
hear that? She can't hear that. So I said there's two different things. One,
Mr. Chair, Secretary McCullough has joined us along with members of her team.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Administrator. Representative Baker, are you on? Terrific. Secretary McCullough, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and hope you could have an opportunity to introduce yourself and members of your team. Whenever you're ready.
That good old mute button will get you every time. Well, good afternoon to all of you today. Great to be here with you to answer some additional follow-up questions. I am joined by several members of the Office of Policy Management team today. Deputy Secretary Diamantis will be joining momentarily. With me today, it also includes Kimberly Kennison. She's the Executive Financial Officer for OPM, Under Secretary Faye Brown-Bruton for Labor Relations, Paul Patamianos, Executive Budget Officer, Greg Messner, Assistant Executive Budget Officer, Scott Gall, who oversees our Chief Data Office. He's our Chief Data Officer. We should also have here with us today Under Secretary Mike Walsh, who will be joining momentarily as well. So with that, that concludes the members of the team that are here today. One more that I might have missed would be Marianne Palmarosa, who is our Chief Administrative Officer. Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I have been going through the, I think, 47-page list of all of the personal services contracts that the state has entered into. It's a lot. But thank you for sending those documents. Are there questions from members of the committee for Secretary McCollum? Oh my goodness, there've got to be, come on. All right, well, do you want to go briefly through I think we asked you 4 questions. Would you perhaps like to detail the responses that we received?
Absolutely. There were 4 key questions from the committee. The first one was with respect to a schedule of outstanding state consultant contracts, inquiring about the information on the value, scope, and timeline of these contracts. I have provided for you as a part of our package copies of our fiscal 2020 personal services agreement in our fiscal 20 purchase of services report that OPM does provide to the legislature annually. Last version of this report was provided on September 30th, 2020. And the report details all of the contracts that fall under a PSA or POS, the dollar value of those expenditures. It breaks down whether they are general fund, federal funds, or other funds supported. It appears that the question from Representative Dathan was pertaining to a schedule of all contracts with a value over $1 million, and that she'd like to have that information within the next month. So the team will be compiling the specific requests for Representative Dathan, and we'll provide that to Sue Keene. In the interim, we thought it would be useful for you to have a perspective on the full scope of reporting that comes out of our finance division for PSA and POS reports. Question number 2 was pertaining to the proposed Create Savings Initiative. You will recall in the budget as submitted for your consideration, there's $20 million of savings for fiscal year 22 and a total of $155 million in the second year. That is comprised of $115 million in expenditure opportunities and $40 million in revenue opportunities. As you can see on the summary that has been provided, and we are looking forward to the full release of the comprehensive report that is expected to be available before April 1st, which will detail, it's a 100-page plus report with lots of detail on the backup for each of the recommendations. That report will include recommendations that are short, medium, and long-term, and certainly far exceed the savings we reflected in the budget for your consideration. However, there are some shorter-term initiatives that the governor is supporting. They're detailed in the document before you. The first is to leverage a common payment platform. Some of the background on that is that Connecticut processes about $1 billion in non-tax revenue related transactions, and only 35% of them go through our global pay contract. The concept here is that we would like to identify the range of other transactions, and the goal here is to push that volume through the global pay contract, which will allow us to leverage lower processing fees. That's about $3 million. And also included in the Creates expenditure opportunities would be the centralization of the payroll processes and functions under the Office of the State Comptroller. Over the past year, we've surveyed employees that have a responsibility or a role in the processing of payroll throughout the executive branch. There are about 80 employees across the state that have a role in processing payroll. The Comptroller's Office has conducted an analysis on the volume of transactions that their central retiree payroll unit is able to perform relative to our decentralized model for active employees. We believe there's an opportunity to centralize and consolidate, and we have a number of employees that are in payroll functions that are expected or at least eligible to retire. So the idea here is as those positions vacate, we would be implementing the centralization within the Comptroller's Office. This initiative also helps us address some of the areas of audit weakness. Consistencies in processing is an area that the Comptroller's Office has flagged, as well as leveraging some of our systems, our self-service processes such as e-payroll and e-benefits. We are proposing to explore savings associated with streamlining the hiring process. using tools such as predictive hiring and some of our larger agencies where there are similar job classes and the hiring process is timely. Techniques that would allow us to reduce the amount of time it takes to refill positions, helping to support lowering some of the overtime costs during that time frame, as well as the use of temporary workers. In the area of managing overtime and absences, Connecticut does spend about $250 million approximately annually on overtime. Obviously, this varies from year to year depending on the number of vacancies that agencies are carrying. Some of the larger consumers of overtime, as you're aware, would be DOC, DEMIS, DDS, and DEST State Police. We are targeting a 6% savings in overtime at approximately $15 million. You will recall there are some strategies already reflected in our budget through the use of part-time and workers in DDS, as well as the creation of a dashboard. We know what gets measured, gets managed. Many agencies lack the tools to consistently analyze and stay on top of overtime. There's a committee that's being put together to identify some of the levers that can be pulled to adjust our overtime spending. In the area of workers' compensation, we have targeted a $5 million savings in this particular line item with a number of strategies that will be detailed in our report. They'll be coming out from under the CREATES initiative. Within the corrections area, we have $20 million of savings in year one and additional savings in the second year of the biennium, about $46.9 million. This includes the closure of 3 facilities or units therein to reflect the reduced prison population that we've seen over the past decade. As you know, the first facility was recently announced, Northern. The savings materialized through operating cost savings coupled with reduction in salary costs due to fewer post and overtime savings. Within the savings target is approximately $20 million for CTEC, as you will see detailed in the report that's forthcoming. The administrative function of our CTEC program benchmarks very high to our traditional programs throughout the state and other states. We believe there's an opportunity to centralize some of these back office functions or partner amongst the various schools, as well as reassess the teacher ratios that are on the lower side. We have areas where there's lower demand. There might be an opportunity to share resources between schools and adjust some of those ratios. In the area of office co-locations, the deputy is on the line under his jurisdiction. He does monitor the real estate for the state of Connecticut coupled with DAS. And there are a number of areas where buildings are underutilized. They have carry very large CapEx costs. And we are spending more than we really need to on OpEx if we were to, in lieu thereof, relocate employees into some of our newer buildings with lower operating costs. And finally, we have an additional target for other savings that will be forthcoming in the CREATES report. So those are the major areas of focus that would get us to the 115 million that's assumed for CREATES opportunities. The third question was pertaining to the reserve for salary adjustment appropriation, with looking for the backup for the calculation of RSA for the upcoming biennium. We have provided for you a summary of our estimates for fiscal year 2021. As you can see, for the general fund, there's appropriation of $23.8 million, a carry forward from fiscal 20 of approximately $58.7 million. After accounting for settled collective bargaining agreements where the funds need to be transferred to their personal services line items, as well as any estimated PS deficiencies or accrual payouts, we do believe at this time that we would carry forward approximately $44.9 million from fiscal 21 to 22. The appropriations that are requested in the governor's proposed budget are $59.1 million in the first year and $114.2 million in fiscal year 2023. And those line items are detailed in terms of the assumptions, primarily comprised of the step increments for unsettled contracts, accrual payouts. Accruals are paid through a combination of, first, the agencies will absorb those costs if they can within their personal services line item, and any remaining funds typically would come from RSA. So there is an amount assumed for accrual payouts, as well as the Social Security related costs for the unsettled contracts and any professional development requirements per collective bargaining agreement. So we've detailed that for you as well in the package. And finally, question number 4 was with respect to part 1 and part 2. The first is respect to state managers. We provided a breakdown of state managers that are currently eligible to retire based on a December 2nd query of all of our executive branch employees by agency. We did provide a data set for December 2nd as of December 2nd, and we provided on January 7th to Senator Austin and Representative Walker through Ms. Keene. And we can forward another copy of that 900-page report. But in that document, you will see that there are about 8,540 employees in the executive branch that are eligible to retire. 505 are managers. In our response to you today, we have provided a breakdown of those manager positions by agency, including the job class and description title. Second part of that question was pertaining to the 1,300 current state managers. The inquiry was how many managers are eligible to accrete into a union. We cannot possibly answer that question without completing a desk audit of the 1,300 current state managers. So we cannot specifically answer that. We did provide the language that is in the State Employees Relations Act that defines a manager, as well as information with respect to what we've experienced through our engagements with the Labor Board. So with that, those are the 4 specific questions that were provided through the committee, and we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you for your answers. Do you have any more information about the governor's broadband initiative and the fiscal impact of that could be helpful for this subcommittee?
We do actually. In our last discussion, you had asked for some backup information pertaining to broadband. I do have Chief Data Officer Scott Gall, who can talk to you a little bit about the OPM portion of the broadband initiative, which is going to support the planning process as well as the mapping throughout the state of Connecticut to identify where we have coverage, the speed of the coverage, where there are gaps. That information will support the DEEP process in which they will be identifying the requirements to meet universal or certified coverage. Our providers will have to certify that they're able to meet those requirements. But I will ask Chief Data Officer Scott Gall if you'd like to provide additional detail on broadband.
Sure, I'll cover the OPM portions, I think, as the Secretary described. So there's, as she said, there's a small amount of funding for a planning process. So if the legislation passes, we'll have the planning process to determine the best way to sort of measure progress on broadband goals over the next several years. And then at the conclusion of that process, hopefully we'll have a plan that we can implement over the next few years. And we have, I think, 2 staff positions that we anticipate would be necessary to undertake the mapping over the next few years, sort of marrying the data from the providers and from the consumer side and providing something that, covers the full extent of the state and gives us a sense of where there might be gaps in coverage or sort of the digital divide is, particularly impacting some segment of the state.
In the total amount, Senator Lesser, across OPM, DEEP, PURA, and the Office of Consumer Counsel, as recommended by the governor, is approximately $2.85 million.
Thank you. And that would be general fund appropriations. Is there any expected use of federal CARES Act or Rescue Plan money to support those initiatives?
That would actually be funded through the Consumer Council and Public Utilities Control Fund as recommended by the governor. With respect to federal dollars that are available, recently in the ARPA, there is a capital improvement funding source for states. That's approximately $141 million. There's pretty broad discretion to support infrastructure projects. It includes water, sewer. Certainly, I believe our delegation is interested in seeing some investments there for broadband. So that certainly would be one area of opportunity if that was a priority of the governor and the legislature.
Good to know. I see Representative Baker has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you for coming out here this afternoon. I have a question in regards to the tribal funds that are listed. This new agreement, and do you have any projections on the grant that's will be what the numbers will look like moving forward if this agreement is if we move forward with this change on agreements and funding, and how would that reflect the personal services and franchises and other? Do you have any projections that you could share with us? And
thank you, Representative Baker. The agreement that was announced by the governor and the tribal leaders is relatively consistent with what we projected in revenue. I obviously, in respect for your jurisdiction, I won't go into much detail there, but it's north of $40 million starting in fiscal 2023 for the state. We are in the process of working with the Department of Consumer Protection to determine what staffing resources they will need. That is a valid point that the budget as proposed did not factor in any operating or position related costs to regulate the terms of the agreement. So our administration is working on that, and we will get that information over to you as soon as possible. We're also providing legislation to support the enactment of the agreement. And so that will detail some of that information, but we will be providing a bill, a draft bill, as well as what we think is necessary on the expense side of the House.
so do you project that these numbers will be adjusted for, you said for 2020, 23, did you say? 23 or 22?
So on the expenditure side of the budget, we will need an appropriation to support the cost to regulate, because the agreement is in effect those new revenues, the sports betting being operational, that is going to be effective for July 1, 2022. So that'll impact fiscal 23. And we will need to work with you to appropriate dollars in DCP to cover the regulatory. And quite frankly, it could impact fiscal 22. They're going to need to stand up the resources in advance of this coming online. So we're working with DCP now. We'll get that information over to you as soon as possible.
Right.
And be happy to take any questions at the time.
So do you project that the personnel numbers are gonna jump, that you're gonna add personnel to manage this?
Yes, absolutely. DCP has indicated they will need additional resources, and we're compiling that. They're analyzing the terms of that agreement have now been shared with the commissioner. So she's working on it in partnership with OPM, and we will need additional resources.
So is that going to be any added personnel in your department itself?
No added personnel in OPM, no.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that information.
You're most welcome.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm all set.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Dathan.
Thank you so much, Madam Commissioner. It's nice to see you today, and I appreciate all the work you and your team have done to help us on the appropriation side understand the methodologies behind the governor's budget. It really is useful, so thank you. First of all, I just wanted to clarify, there is no major rush on my request. I didn't know if you had some sort of contract management system that you would be able to run a query. I don't need copies of contracts. I just want to have a listing and a schedule. So I didn't mean it to be a voluminous ask, and it sounds like it is. And I am happy to work through the request with your office if it is cumbersome, because that wasn't my intent. I thought you might have some sort of management system that could generate it. So that is useful. And I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that. Otherwise, I think we have, at least from my side, I think I have a good understanding of all your points. So thank you so much for your presentations, and look forward to seeing you again and hearing more about how I did forget one question I had. The creates report, you said it was going to be expected a draft report sometime in March. Have you received that draft yet? And can you share anything with the committee?
We will have a final report that will be public by April 1st. We intend to brief leadership and certain committees in advance. So that will be forthcoming before it is released. So the final report will be available for right before April 1st.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for everything, and we'll, I'm sure, speak again soon. Hopefully, take care.
Thank you so much. We'll
pull
that data
Chair.
together for you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative, and I think you made that clear. But obviously, if there's any material that that the Secretary is able to share with the members of the committee, hopefully she'll share it with Sue Keen so we can get it out to everyone.
Will do.
Okay, great. And just had one other question. Was there a cost associated with the development of the CT Creates report? Is that something that had a fiscal impact?
Well, the Senator Lesser, thank you for the question. The BCG analysis did have a cost to bring them in to review every agency and go through their operations, their programs, areas of strength, weakness, and opportunities for efficiencies. Undersecretary Mike Walsh is here, and sir, if you would advise the committee of the total amount of the contract.
Madam Secretary, members of the committee, this is Mike Walsh. The cost of the BCG report was $2 million.
Thank you. Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. On the to Senator Lesser's question, can you hear me now?
Okay, there you go.
To Senator Lesser's question on broadband, how did CEN figure into that, or did it not?
Well, CEN certainly, from an educational perspective, is a little bit ahead of the game on the infrastructure. Scott, do you want to comment about our thoughts of the role of CEN as a part of the rollout?
Yeah, I forget the actual legislative language, but I believe they may be written into one of the groups to be consulted with in development of the mapping. I think they've been active participants in the process so far. And I think certainly as far as the mapping goes, one of the goals is to map the infrastructure that's there, which would absolutely include CEN.
And thank you for that. And my understanding is that when CEN was put in, that there was a public portion to that that rollout. Do you know if that was in the legislation?
That is correct. There were some grants, and some of them were administered through OPM to help support that rollout. Scott, is there anything more that you want to add to that? And we can certainly send some follow-up information through Ms. Keen.
No,
So that public rollout, my understanding is that all of the whole program of CEN can be used for a public portion of this. Is that true?
Scott?
I will, that is my understanding, but I would defer to DAS where CEN is. So I think that's my understanding, but my understanding may be imperfect, I think I would say.
Senator, we'll do some follow-up to get you a specific question, answer to that question.
Right, because I'm interested in seeing if, since we already have that infrastructure in, where we're going with that. I'd like to expand upon that. Seems to me to make a lot of sense.
Will do. I would note that while we intend to leverage the CEN, it is not necessarily for private use. So we'd have to look at some of those permissions. It was primarily for schools and towns. So we'll have to evaluate whether or not it can be leveraged for private use. My understanding is that there are some restrictions there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to figure out if that is for if that has an ability to roll out in certain areas that that we could augment versus putting in all new. Seems to me to make a lot of sense. My second question is relative to managers. So you have 1,300 managers that sit in across the board. What is the administration's position on funding or benefit packages for managers?
Senator, you have to ask
the accretion. I'm sorry, to stop the accretion of managers into bargaining units.
Very good.
And I'm
Senator,
fine if all 1,500 go into a bargaining unit.
Of course,
it
of course.
Pay work, so.
Well, when you speak to benefit package, I think what we're talking about is the compensation, and the fact that managers have not consistently received wage increases has compounded the issue of salary concerns. In many cases, some managers have subordinates that are earning more than them. That is one of the reasons why the governor included an increase for managers in the first year of the budget. But number two, I believe we discussed this previously, the significant number of managers that are slated to retire, as well as the amount of potential turnover in positions, gives us a great opportunity to address these structural issues agency by agency. So as we now move into from this planning process, knowing where the risks are for retirement by agency, identifying the opportunities to optimize, if you will, or modernize state government. The second stage of this process is the project management, is really to go agency by agency to be prepared for where those vacancies are going to occur, maybe some predictive hiring in advance of some of those retirements. And as those positions vacate and and typically you're going to backfill at the lower level, herein lies naturally baked in savings where we can start to fix some of these problems. So that's a part of our project management launch on shifting from planning of creates and efficiency savings to actually implementation. We continue to have ongoing discussions with the Managers Association, and we've been very transparent with them that through the process of addressing the significant amount of retirements will be the opportunity for us to address some of the salary inequity issues. So that really starts in implementation. And quite frankly, we encourage future administrations to be mindful of when we're approving increases for union members, and that obviously there's an impact on not ensuring that managers keep pace. In this case, there's been a significant amount of accretion, and if we don't fix it, it's going to continue. So it's on the top of the radar for the Lamont administration, and we'll be beginning to address that as the retirements unfold.
So you just brought up an interesting point relative to salaries for the rank and file of our different agencies. And that would be that in some cases, we're not keeping up with the market rate for employees. So for example, a nurse in the Department of Corrections can make about $50 an hour to start, but a nurse in private sector is around $80 an hour, making it hard to fill that job class. Are you saying that, I understand that you want to keep the salaries down, but are you saying that the salaries would be kept to a level that we would not be able to hire people? I mean, I understand we want managers to make more, but wouldn't the answer be to raise the salaries of managers and not necessarily keep the salaries down of rank and file members?
I think it's going to be an agency by agency evaluation. I think there's a lot of morale issues with the situation that we've inherited, that we will seek to address. But where we have challenges in recruitment, I don't believe there's an across the board philosophy that we are going to pursue. We're going to have to look at it agency by agency. We have used a number of strategies in hard to recruit areas, and Faye's on the line and she could talk about, some of the areas for nurses or direct care staff in, DMS or DDS. She can talk to you about some of those strategies. Some of those positions we do offer stipends or add-ons to make our rates, our salaries more attractive. But there are some areas where we cannot compete with market rate, and those individuals come to the state of Connecticut for other reasons, such as, a more generous benefits package on healthcare. And so it's important to look at the total compensation. And that's what we do. And that's why there's not an across the board approach. There is a position by position relative to that industry, that market, and our total compensation package. Undersecretary Brown-Bruton, is there any other specifics that you want to give Senator Austin about some of the areas where your unit has stepped in to help support challenges in recruitment?
Yes, Madam Secretary, we have, and particularly with the healthcare units, negotiated specific economic portions of the agreement to make it more attractive. Just being perfectly candid, you know better than anybody that the correctional environment is not the most attractive. And so if you can get a job at the local clinic versus in a level 4 correctional institution, you might be drawn to that. But on the other hand, we do have the hazardous duty retirement feature that's not available in the public sector, in the private sector at your local clinic. We have negotiated agreements to draw people in quickly, get them in the door, get them placed, and figure out the musical chairs option later, just to make sure that we get people in the door as quickly as possible. And as you know, we're currently at the table with all of the OLR service units and looking at creative ways to bring people in and make state employment more attractive.
So, Faye, when you're talking about the benefit package relative to the pension, it's very much in line with the private sector now with the hybrid 401k. The healthcare plan has had significant decreases in it over the last number of years. Are you seeing that that's more in line with private sector now?
No, what I'm seeing is that the state health insurance benefit package is still more attractive. My sister is an RN, and by way of example, the same medication that I had to get for one of my kids, I paid $3 for. She paid $45 for out of pocket. So the state benefit is still more attractive, although there has been some changes and adjustments. As I said, then I paid $3. Today I paid $5. And I'm sure she'd pay much more than the $45. So it's still attractive. And with respect to hazardous duty, it's still, well, now it's 25 years and out. And so that's not a feature that's available most places in the private sector.
That's true. It was 25 when I started and then went to 20 and then now back up to 25. That just seesaws back and forth between those two numbers. So thank you for that. I know that we're all ready to leave. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday night. Senator Lesser?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Senator Austin. I want just one last question. I know there was some bounce back in the last budget, and I don't mean to rehash it, but just for a refresher, school construction is now housed in OPM, and is that right?
School construction statutorily still resides under the Department of Administrative Services. Through MOU, ministerial functions have been delegated to OPM. The deputy secretary serves as the deputy secretary and the director of OSCR. So last year, or the first year, we proposed the transfer and understand that that was not well received. Therefore, we did not repropose it. I'm hoping that the time frame that has passed has increased confidence on the integrity of the program, irrespective of where it's housed. But statutorily, OSCR is a part of DAS.
And there have been no changes that we should know about to the school construction process outside of the MOU transferring specific responsibility for the operation of it.
Well, I would be remiss to answer all the school construction questions when I have the deputy and the director of OSCR. So, Mr. Deputy.
I can assure you, Senator, that none of the processes have changed. If anything, we've attempted to enhance them as we do each year to continue to partner with the various towns on the types of projects that we do. Nothing has changed, and it's remained the way it has in the last 6 years that I've been at the helm with school construction.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from members of the subcommittee? If not, thank you, Madam Secretary, for your time and your team's time, and we appreciate the follow-up, and hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Our pleasure. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.